This week on Jaw Speaks Digital, Jessica speaks to Avery and Brian Baker from Avery and Brian Experience. The father-son duo talk about their public speaking and how their relationship inspired others and helped them launch a business. Subscribe to the podcast for information and tips to let you know what to do next.
Tell the people out there in internet land what your names are, what it is that you do.
Very good. My name's Avery. And my name is Brian, and we are speakers. We're motivational speakers. We are soon to be authors within like the next week of this podcast.
No, we are authors. The book is available on Kindle, but not available paperback just yet.
Right.
Okay.
Will be available next week.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
where did the idea from the book come from?
Wow, that's kind of deep. So let me give you some background on that. So about maybe 3 years ago, I stepped to Avery. He was still in college, about, what were you, a sophomore at the time?
Yeah.
I think a sophomore at the time. And I told him, I said, we need to do something together. We're always talking about, healthy family relationships. And so we need to show people what a healthy family relationship looks like. And so he wasn't ready to do it at the time.
Oh.
He just said, to his credit, he just said, I don't know myself well enough yet.
Wow.
Right, so
That's pretty deep,
that was
too.
on the mature tip,
Yeah,
right? I was like,
absolutely.
okay, I'm respect, right? I was like, I feel you, right? Yeah, indeed. And so as he entered into his senior year of college, I just brought it up to him again. I said, look, if you're ready, I'd love to do something with you, and this is kind of what I had in mind. So, he said he was ready at the time, so we sat down and we started to put together a signature talk on how do you create healthy family
Now,
relationships.
have you been a speaker for
I've been a
majority of your
speaker for
career?
about 10 years.
Okay, gotcha.
Right. I've been a speaker for about 10 years, and I've been a paid speaker for about the last 2 years.
Okay.
Right. And so, I've interacted with a lot of people in the business and so forth and so on. So we put together this signature talk on creating family relationships, the 5 keys to create family relationships. And we did it for the first time to about 40 people, what was that, a year ago, April?
Yeah.
A year ago, April.
About that time.
Yeah.
End of March, maybe.
Yeah, and
Early
so
April.
we have folks from our lives, and our friends,
family,
business colleagues,
family.
right? Some folks from the community come and check it out, and it blew their minds. It was kind of like, we've never seen anything like this. The way you guys flow back and forth, the stories that you tell, so forth and so on. And so I just said, there might be something to this, right? And he was still a little bit skeptical.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah. How did you feel about it after your dad kind of brought it to you? And did you even have in your mind that you wanted to be a speaker at all?
No. To answer that last question, no. I mean, had you asked me 6 months prior to me graduating college that, hey, you think you want to be a motivational speaker after you graduate, I would have laughed. Just because that wasn't necessarily the plan, but I'm a believer in following the signs. And so at the time, this was, at the beginning of 2018, and my dad had just retired from corporate America, where he was working for 25 plus years. And I had just returned from a semester interning in Washington, D.C. And I was interning at a public relations firm, which just followed me studying abroad in Australia. So there was a year where I wasn't even in Sacramento in California, and I was traveling, I had the travel bug, and I come back and I had one more semester of college. And so I'm like, all right, I gotta figure out, that was fun, but now I gotta figure out life. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
And, while going through the job application process, I just, something in me was just kind of like, man, it doesn't feel like this is the step I want to take yet. Now, I knew I still have aspirations to go to grad school. I want to go get my MBA. And so I kind of told myself, all right, well, I'm in this in-between period. Like, I know I want to go to grad school. I know I'm not ready for grad school just yet, but now I got to figure out what am I going to do in between. And it just happened that was the time where he came back to me on the heels of my travels and on the heels of me being away, interning, and he came back to me, and like he said, he was just like, we should do something together. So that's where the talk kind of started forming, and then
In the book.
Yeah. And the book is been, a little over a year to the date, I would say. of just the first time. I remember the first time sitting in the office and brainstorming.
Yeah.
Just notebook and just talking about, okay, what are the stories that we want to talk about in this book?
That was interesting. The interesting part about that, Jessica, was we gave ourselves like 3 days to just go our separate ways, because he doesn't live at home. So it's like we gave ourselves three days to go our separate ways and come back, and we talked about AAU basketball, because I coached this AAU basketball team for 6 years.
Wow.
And so we said, let's just come back with an AAU story from your perspective and my perspective and see what it looks like, right? We came back and they like mirrored each other.
Wow.
We hadn't even talked about it. It was really, really funny. He was talking about what a tyrant I was as this coach. But so that's kind of how we started the process and just kind of got it rolling from there.
Oh, wow, I love that. And so after you went ahead, you sat down, you got the plan together. What was the next step? What did you do next after that? Like, how did you find these people to speak to, and who did you know? How did you know who your audience would be?
Oh, okay. Yeah, so it's interesting. So what we did was, as a speaker, I know, and as a salesperson for 20 years in corporate America, running sales teams, being a sales executive, having account managers, you prospect.
Got it.
Right? You hunt. And you started like putting out the feelers and getting your email together. But the main thing I have to say, and as we've started to really pick up momentum and speed on this, the main thing from a speaker's perspective is you gotta have a website that shows that you're credible as speakers. So that was so the growing pains are coming from the prospect, and like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. A father and son, we've never really heard anything like, how do you create healthy family relationships and everything? What's your website? And so we were building the website, and it didn't have that, I guess, social proof that you need these days, right? And so we just kept speaking and speaking for free, obviously, as
Well,
as
how
you're
are you
speaking.
getting the speaking engagements even? Were you just reaching out to
Yeah,
people?
just reaching. We were reaching out. We spoke at some churches, Rotary clubs. We put on our own events and invited people to. Invited the public to, and started growing a little bit. And so then we decided, well, let's just go to a couple of national conferences and do this. Pitch this talk to audiences. And the very first one we went to was in Orlando, Florida. And what ended up happening, and I'll let Avery kind of tell the story on this, but I think this was a time where he realized, he's like, oh, this is kind of dope. Could be bigger than I thought. We were in Orlando, and they put us in a room, I guess sat about 200 people. But we probably had about 250 people in this room, because it was wall-to-wall people. They were standing up against the back of the door, and they were just really interested in our topic, which was 5 keys to empower your family, a parent and child relationship. That's the title of the talk. And so these folks flocked in, and so I think it took him by surprise a little bit. I'll let him pick up how he felt after we got started and after we finished, and what your vibe was.
Yeah, it was definitely the biggest audience we had spoken to up to that point. And so I'm an extrovert, so I feed off that energy. So that was cool, seeing a big audience there, a little nervous, but it went well. And afterwards is when it really hit me, because we have a Q&A session at the end of every one of our events, and we're open books. So we open the floor up, and we kind of have to encourage people to ask questions, because everybody doesn't really know how deep of a question they want to ask. And we're like, no, ask away. And at the conclusion, we realized just how many people stayed for the Q&A, as opposed to, the session's over, everybody leaves, right?
Exactly.
It was like 60-70% of the room just stayed around to hear what questions were going to be asked and hear our responses. And then even after that, because the session ended, and we're kind of like, okay, well, we don't want to take too much more of your time. And then that's when, dozens of people were coming up to us to just talk to us, shake our hands, thank us. I had a woman come up to me and pray for me, just because what she heard us talk about was so powerful to her, and it was so relevant to where she was. And that's when it really kind of hit me, because one of the biggest struggles for me starting this is that it was hard for me to tell my story in a way that I felt like it was somewhat extraordinary because it was so normal to me.
Oh, gotcha.
So when I'm talking about my story, and there's times where it hits people a certain way that I wasn't even realizing.
Surprised you.
I was surprised that people were receptive to that part of our story. And so, but after speaking down in Florida, I got a lot more perspective on just what it is people want to hear about, you know, what it is that really attracts them. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was big.
Yeah, it's been a process to watch this talk that we created initially, how it's morphed. And we've gotten deeper in it. And the way that we've gotten deeper in it is that we sit down every week on our little huddle and get together and say, okay, so what's the plan? How are we going to attack this? Same thing we did with the book. Everything that we're doing, right? We're working on some online training courses right now, so we're in the midst of doing that. But one of the things that we did, Jessica, that I think has made the talk even more powerful and even more authentic is we touch on things like mental health issues.
Yeah.
And that came about because for the first time in my life, when he was headed into high school, I was dealing with depression.
Yeah.
And I had never dealt with anything like that before. I was dealing with anxiety. I was dealing with insomnia because we went through a lot of losses in our family in a short period of time.
So can you talk about what that kind of looked like for you? How did you, what were the signs?
Yeah.
Kind of talk a little bit about that, because I feel like it's a lot different for African American people than it comes out in, you know, maybe our other counterparts.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how that came out for you.
Yeah,
and what that looked
absolutely,
like.
absolutely. So let me, I'll give you a little background. In 2008, my father had knee replacement surgery. And, you know, he was doing well on his recovery, but about a month after the surgery, he had some complications and he ended up passing away in his sleep. And so that just threw me for an absolute loop when I got the word that morning what had happened. And so I didn't really know how to process what I was feeling, but I knew I was feeling, I had this weird feeling for about a week, and I would tell my wife every time I laid down, I felt like I was just falling. Like I was laying on the bed, but it was like I just fell out of an airplane and I couldn't stop my fall. And so, you know, upon talking to her a little bit, I said, I think I got to go and see someone about this. And so I made an appointment for a counselor. And ironic enough, the first counselor that I met could not relate to me at all, and I think it was a cultural thing, right? It was like I shared what I was kind of going through, and
It's not in the DSM though.
Pretty
So
much.
it can't be true.
Yeah,
It's like,
pretty
no,
much.
Absolutely, it can be true. It does not have to be in the DSM.
Exactly.
That was not based on us anyway. Anyway, that's a different podcast episode.
But what ended up happening was it's kind of like I got turned off by that experience.
Absolutely.
And so I started just trying to process.
Because it's invalidating kind of what you were going through. You're like, no, I'm going
yeah,
through it.
I'm
telling
feeling
you.
this, right?
Exactly.
I am feeling what's happening. And so I kind of just started, I started reading, but not necessarily taking the steps towards wellness.
Got it.
Right?
Yeah.
And so a year to the day of my father's memorial service, exactly 1 year, my only brother passed away. Right? And so I was right back, because the healing, I was taking the steps, going through the grieving process, but I was right back at the same place that I was a year ago. And at that point in time, I just said, I've got to do something, because our relationship was being affected and eroded by it. I was very short with both of my sons. My wife and my wife wasn't arguing with me. She was very supportive with me, but I wasn't being right in terms of like my tone, my attitude, and all these types of things. And
So it started coming out as anger.
Absolutely.
And irritation.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, I was ruining like a really good thing. I've been married for going on 30 years to my wife. My sons and I have always been close. So, it was a process of going and seeking out help, but finding the right person who could relate to me to help me. And so I went through this whole metamorphosis process of mindfulness, health and wellness to kind of get myself together. So we talk about that on stage, and we touch on it a little bit in the book, not so much. That's kind of like part 2 of a book.
Got it.
But so we talk about that, and then he's dealt with some struggles as well that he talks about in the form of attention deficit disorder. And so when we decided that we were going to be, as he said, open books, people are just kind of like, wow, this is really deep.
And so talk a little bit about how people are like, wow, because this is coming from 2 African-American males as well.
Yeah, I'll let you touch on that.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's kind of always just in my mind as far as how we're being perceived.
Absolutely.
Because I know this is different than most of the creativity that comes out of the African American community. There was a really good interview I watched with this rapper named Vince Staples. Vince Staples, okay. Yeah. I know Vince. And he said, think about all of the creativity that comes from Black people. It all has to do with trauma, and it all has to deal with traumatic events. Yeah. And so that really, when I heard that kind of hit me, because I realized, all of what we kind of absorb is very dramatic, very traumatic. And while that is real, don't get me wrong, that's very real, there's also a lot of very positive things that are going on in all of our lives that we don't necessarily receive. We don't, that's not the first thing that pops up on our feeds or on the news. And so that was a big thing for me when we started this. I wanted to make sure that we were helping, at least, adding a unique voice to everybody's feeds. I like to say that everybody's feeds, because that's just, we're all.
You guys all know this. This is what I'm all about. Positivity on social media.
That's it. Yeah. And that's really real for me. And so, compounding just wanting to add positivity with being 2 African American men who want to talk about positivity, that plays a big role into kind of everything that we do, everything we talk about, how we market ourselves.
Absolutely.
And the one thing that's interesting about that is the first chapter of our book is called Open Conversations.
Yeah, I was going to actually dig into that. What are the 5 keys to strengthen your relationship?
No. But so they are open conversations, building trust, setting expectations, conflict resolution, and emotional intelligence, right? And so, as Avery always explains during the talk, is all of the stuff that we went through, the turbulence and the trials and tribulations, it's because of these keys that we've been able to come out on the other side of this thing, and you see us on stage speaking together. But the open conversations chapter and what we talk about in our talk is very interesting, because sometimes in the African American household, right, open conversations are not necessarily a thing that everybody is into, right? It's the because I said so, or it's because it's do what I say, right? Or be seen but not heard type thing, right? And so that we
kind of hand it down.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
I call them robotic. Something you hear over and over, and you just believe it, and you just go with it.
Correct. And so we kind of we flip the script on that, because we talk about culture all the time in workplaces, right? But we don't focus on our culture in our homes.
Absolutely.
And that's what my wife and I set out to do with them. And it really did help us in terms of crafting everything that has happened in our lives.
Absolutely. So the 5 keys to strengthen your relationship, why 5? And did you notice that you had those 5 and that's kind of what you went with, or did you craft this okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's a good number, let's go with that? Well, how did you come up with 5?
Yeah, it's interesting. So as Avery said, when we started brainstorming and kind of figuring out this, what do we want to say? We just started thinking about our journey. Right? And what were the things that really had the biggest impact? And so, as we started kind of formulating a list and kind of redoing it and taking it from 12 things down to 10 things down to 8 things, we were these were the anchors, right? These were the anchors that really did it for us. And so that's how we came to that. It was nothing special about the number 5.
Got it. Okay.
Nothing special about the number 5.
And so there's another son in this, and where does he fit in all of this?
Wow, that's deep. That's deep. You want to talk about your little brother?
He plays a really big role in this. Just kind of
how old is he?
He's 21.
21.
So he just graduated from college.
He's young.
No.
And how does he feel about you two like going off and like doing a whole Brian and Avery thing. He's like, hey.
Yeah, that's one of the questions we get all the
Right,
time in the
right.
Q&A session. Do
Right.
you want to talk
No,
about?
he's super supportive, and he kind of is doing his own thing right
And what does
now.
he do?
Well, he's an actor, and he was a musical theater major at UCLA.
Oh, so I see the pathway,
Yeah.
right? You have the book, and he acts in there, and he acts as you.
Yeah,
All
exactly.
right.
It's
You
the
just
one
hire
man.
Dad
It's a
in,
one
and
man
then you
show.
guys are directing.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you even come up with the idea first and foremost? Like, were you laying in bed one day and just like, I think maybe.
Well,
Honestly, I feel like that's probably how he does come up with a lot of his ideas. It's just-
a little bit. But you know, one of the things, Jessica, is that for a number of years, people always commented on like, you got a really cool relationship with your sons, and you know, you should tell that story. And it's very interesting because in the foreword in our book, the person that wrote the foreword is a dear friend of my father's. And she had been bugging my father to write a book about him raising me and my brother. And so the foreword is very moving. And so the bottom line is I just felt like, you know, we had a positive story to tell, and that families and people in general are in need of some positive stories about relationships, because one of the problems is that people oftentimes don't possess the necessary tools to either create, grow, or repair relationships. And that's why we decided to do, well, that's why I decided to go that direction and try to bring him along. So you can answer your part.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit I wasn't sold that this was going to grow exponentially kind of quickly. I just kind of thought, all right, you know what, like, I'll be speaking with my dad, we'll tell our story, and maybe some people will pick up on it and will appreciate it and get something from it. And that was really kind of the whole goal, is to help people. So, but like I said earlier, just after we went to Florida and seeing the way those people responded and reacted, I realized, like, oh, this is bigger than I thought.
The value of your story. Right?
Yeah.
I always talk to people about that, right? The value of your story.
Yeah.
Like you've lived it, so you're like, yeah, it's nothing.
Right.
He's
right.
like, no, you don't understand how powerful that is.
Absolutely.
That you were able to come out of that, and then you have a different perspective of it that a lot of people grasp onto. So with that, did you guys see a need in the environment that kind of gave you guys, either of you, like yes, we definitely need, other than, of course, the experience you had speaking? Did you see anything that happened in Sacramento, on the news, anything like that? It's just like, you know what?
It was
people
more.
really need this.
It was more just years of kind of being told by close family, friends, or extended relatives, just kind of always complimenting our relationship.
Were you guys doing like coaching, like on a minor scale, or you having people come to you guys?
Now, I coach.
Okay.
So I coach on the business side, but now there are parents that see us speak that are asking me about
For
coaching, right?
Okay, but you never had like any experiences outside of that were kind of like organic. Like,
No, well,
okay, no, this is what you should do.
But actually, that's
no,
not true.
he-
Because
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm sure he does.
Well,
Come pulling in.
I've had several friends through the years that have come to me and say, "Hey, will you talk to my child?" Right, and so I did that for a long time, right, and
That's why he said he's a paid speaker for the last couple of years.
Exactly, right?
He's been speaking
Yeah.
for a decade.
And I find that that's usually it's usually how it works.
Yeah.
You've been doing this for a long
Sure,
time. Right?
and even from the AAU basketball thing, I mean, like we started his team when I think he was in the third or fourth grade,
Yeah,
fourth grade,
8 years old, maybe
and
9 years old.
we kept the same core group of kids through the years. We added a lot more. We had other teams come in and coached other levels, but that whole time that was coaching. That was coaching young people and coaching their parents a little bit,
Right.
because that's a whole different
Right,
podcast, the AAU world.
Yes, because I'm sure because a lot of people want to fight and everything else.
Yeah,
and
we
it's
got
like,
stories about. We could do a book on AAU.
Hey.
Honestly.
Yeah, you know what?
I mean,
Whole nother target
Yeah,
audience, right?
exactly. That would be
It's a
crazy.
whole nother target audience.
Indeed.
Because so many people just need that help of how do you allow your child to lose, and that's okay.
Oh yeah.
Failure is the biggest thing that you should absolutely allow your kids to do.
Yeah.
And a lot of people want to kind of curb and no.
Yeah, protect
Like,
them
no,
from that.
oh, you failed. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Get back up and let's do something else.
Right.
You know?
Keep
Like,
it
I tell my
pushing.
kids all the time. We
Yeah.
don't quit.
Right.
Now, you might fail. might not like it, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You learned.
No,
Let's
you're
try
absolutely
something
right.
else.
Absolutely right.
So,
Indeed,
something I
indeed.
had to learn in hard way.
I think we all did a little bit.
Right. Okay, so we talked about the 5 keys. We talked about you speaking.
Yeah.
What's next? What's next on the agenda? Of course, more speaking and of course book promotions.
Yes,
But what do you see coming? Oh, you said courses.
Yeah.
And there's an audio book that's coming. I mean,
Yeah, audio
when they
book.
get on it, they get on it.
Yeah, we're trying to work this program.
Oh, you're looking at it.
Okay, so here's the capper. Now, this is really, really interesting. Okay. So we spoke recently down at UCLA, and we spoke to an organization that supports families, mainly Latino families.
Okay.
And so when we were talking about the book, and in the Q&A session and so forth and so on, a woman said, "You got to get this book translated into Spanish."
Absolutely.
So now we're looking at that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what's next.
Oh, absolutely. Every language,
Yeah.
right?
Every language, yeah.
Indeed,
And then getting the audiobook in that language too.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
Man, if you guys aren't picking up these gems, they dropping right here.
Oh yeah,
Right?
indeed, right?
Right?
Because look, but at the end of the day, like you got to be listening.
Let's just speak to our speakers really quick, right? For a good 5 minutes, 5 extra minutes to talk to our speakers.
Absolutely.
Any speakers, because I have a lot of speakers that listen to the podcast, and I work with a lot of speakers. Tell them a little bit about the process of doing all of this and how you guys came up with the outline. Like you said, you published the book in how long?
It was about 10 months.
Okay.
About
okay.
10 months,
Okay.
yeah.
10 months, but still, this whole idea and this concept was in your head for a long time.
Sure.
Right? But tell us a little bit about the process of getting the book together, doing the audio book, and
Yeah.
then moving into courses. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I know a lot of speakers from over
Name
the
drop.
years. I don't want to name drop necessarily because I don't. But folks that I go to conferences in different parts
Who
of
you
the
learn
country.
from? Who's your,
Well,
who's your-
one of the gentlemen that I learned from last year.
that you're okay with name dropping, of course.
Yeah. Well, one of the people that I really miss a lot is a gentleman named Tony Wilkins.
Okay.
And unfortunately, Tony passed away about 6 or 7 months ago now, unexpectedly. And I met him at a conference 2 years ago in Las Vegas. And this gentleman, he was a published author. I think he had about 4 books. Been in the speaking business for a long time, coached people on how to make money speaking. And so we had some real heart-to-heart conversations about how to do this thing, right?
Okay.
And because I was just starting to get paid, I was trying to get to that paid speaking level, he gave me a lot of insight on how to do it and how to write a book and the purpose that the book serves for you as a speaker. So he gave me pearls of wisdom on that, and I miss him because he was the gentleman that told me the project that I wanted to do with Avery. He's like, there's a void for that, and he's a gentleman that would put on events. So it was funny. He's like, if you don't hurry up, I'm gonna start putting on father-son events, because I'm gonna steal your idea, right? But he really helped me formulate it, and he helped me get there. And so, once I realized the importance of having a book as a speaker, right, we just kind of got on it. And the easy part about it was it's our story.
Nice.
And so for us to just sit down and write our story, but to then include these nuggets on and breaking down, like, how do you listen more effectively during open conversations? Like, how do you build trust? Not just talking about building trust, but how do you do it, right? And so that's what's in the book. Like, we tell a lot of our stories, but then we start giving the way, the tools, and the roadmap to do that. And so naturally, some online courses are on the way, and one of the things, a very good friend of our families, he has a digital marketing company.
Nice.
And so we talked to him one day. He's like, you guys need a family membership site. So that's the next thing on the horizon. So all this content that we are creating, we will be launching a membership site for families, and each month there'll be new content coming on. And we were just talking about this yesterday. We don't want the site to just merely be like this is what you do as parents, and this is what there's going to be a little bit of that, but it's really a lot about like, how do you stay positive in life? How you know, that the importance of mindfulness. Avery's very much into that. And so we're trying to incorporate a lot of things into this membership site. So when people go on there, they're just kind of like, oh, this is about like the total
The
family,
whole thing.
body, person experience, not just like, oh, these guys are telling us about this. And so, yeah. But anyway,
Put your kids on punishment, take them off.
yeah, well,
Like, right?
yeah.
It's more to that.
It's a whole lot more than that. So we're excited about it.
Yeah. So
what's
Avery,
on
tell
the
us a
horizon.
little bit about the mindfulness really quick, and then move into who your inspirations are as far as speakers.
Yeah.
And I know yours is completely different, which is great to have these two different dynamics, right? So,
the mindfulness.
This is the first time I've had a rapper mentioned on the podcast.
For real?
So now, I've mentioned Tupac all the time, but
Right. Well, he can.
a new school rapper.
Right. Exactly.
You know, I feel like they're all mumbles, but maybe not.
Maybe not. You give him a chance.
I do like Vic Mensa though. That's my dude.
Yeah.
That's my dude.
Yeah. The
I
mindfulness
feel like
thing.
this sometimes.
Sometimes, you gotta get the clean version. This
is true. This is true.
It gets wild a little bit. I've been a big proponent of yoga and meditation for 4 or 5 years now. I actually first got introduced to it from my mother, who she just my mom's always just picking up new things, and she's one of those people that will try new things, and so she's very open-minded, which I love, and that's kind of carried down to me a little bit. And so when I found yoga, and then it wasn't until I was really struggling with ADD that I was just searching for something that can help. And at the time, I was just really trying to focus on, understanding myself, understanding my mental, because that was the big struggle. And then I got back into yoga, and from there, kind of incorporated meditation. And so that plays a really big role in my life, just as far as helping me deal with the ADD and helping me deal with sometimes, just knowing how to block out the noise. Because there's so many distractions, there's so much white noise all around us. And that's what yoga and meditating kind of really helped me do, is stay focused on what's, the power of now. I think that's a really good book, Eckhart Tolle. And so yeah, just really been trying to incorporate that more and more consistently into my life, incorporating it in my life, and then even kind of telling my friends, because it's also, that's another thing that comes with it, is people just kind of questioning, well, why are you going to yoga so much? Like, why are you, and I tell my friends, like, when they're trying to hang out, and I'm like, I'm going to this yoga class. And then, so their first response is like, what? Like, and now, by this point, they're kind of used to it. They're like, okay, that's Avery's thing, he does what he does. But, I've been a proponent of just finding what works for you. And if I can talk about yoga, meditating, when we spoke down in Texas a couple of months ago, I told the story about me struggling with ADD, and somebody after the talk came up to me, and she was really struggling with her 13-year-old with ADD, and she was desperately trying to figure out ways that she could help him. And I started telling her about meditating and yoga, and just, it worked for me. I don't know if it will work for him, but it's definitely worth a shot.
Absolutely.
And that's just kind of the message that I go about.
I love it. Yeah. So tell everyone any last thoughts that you guys have, and then also where they can find all of this great information. Like you mentioned your website, but you didn't mention the URL.
So let me just say thank you. For having us. This is really cool. We appreciate it.
Thanks for coming on.
Absolutely, it's fun for us. We're learning from this.
And
just hanging out with you today. But I'll just end it with the thank you. I'll let him do all of the where to find everything. That's the beauty of the talk. This is how we work. It's a generational thing, right?
Absolutely.
Now, I know people my age that are into the social media thing. And that's not necessarily how I roll.
Got it.
But I can turn it over to him and let him do all that stuff.
All right.
I'll just start with like the website, averyandbrian.com, AveryandBrian, averyandbrian.com. You can find us on social medias, LinkedIn and Facebook underneath the Avery and Brian Experience, Instagram under Avery and Brian XP. So that's a little bit about the social aspect, but yeah, I guess I just want to end it with a thank you.
Well, the book and
Talk about the book. Yes, so the book is available on Amazon, on Kindle, Amazon Kindle. The paperback will be available next week. And yeah, if you're someone who's looking to create, grow, or repair your relationships, this is a book for you. We dive deep into some stories that throughout my childhood, where I talk about how my dad helped me get my first job. And, from that, it helped me realize, like, okay, this guy's kind of trustworthy. Like, this guy kind of knows
right.
what he's doing, go figure. Yeah, like, oh, is this guy smart?
Really?
And so, yeah.
I'm with Brian on this one. Proceed.
I know, it's funny. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's the mind.
No,
And
yeah.
that's what we need
And that's
to
a
know,
perspective.
Right? That's
And
a perspective we need to know.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and so, and the last thing I want to say about the book is, even though it's me and my dad who wrote this book, and we have a parent-child perspective as kind of the subtitle, really, the keys that we talk about, they go beyond just a parent and child relationship. Work relationships with a significant other, any type of relationship, friends. You need trust in any of your friendships. You need expectations of what's the line, with a significant other, conflict resolution. These are all things that come up in all of our relationships. And so we just talk about it, obviously, because we're a father and a son, and so that's the perspective we have. But we really feel like these are keys and these are nuggets that they go beyond just a parent and a child or a father and a son. They're really applicable to all types of relationships.
What was your major in college?
I was actually an economics major. I was a communication studies minor. So that's kind of how I got that PR internship in DC. And
I totally see this in your future. The whole talking and the communication, I'm like, maybe it was psychology, but no.
Yeah, so kind of, different path, but I'm here now. Like I said, I'm really big on following the signs, and
Absolutely.
so I think the signs they point me to this direction right now, and that's where I'm at. So
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. Well,
cool.
thank you guys so much for coming on.
you.
And
Thank you.
I'll talk to you all soon. Peace.
all right.